Knife legislation is defined as the body of statutory law or case law promulgated or enacted by a government or other governing jurisdiction that prohibits, criminalizes, or restricts the otherwise legal manufacture, importation, sale, transfer, possession, transport, or use of knives. The carrying of knives in public is forbidden or restricted by law in many countries. Exceptions may be made for hunting knives, pocket knives, and knives used for work-related purposes, depending upon the laws of a given jurisdiction. In turn, the carrying or possessing of certain type of knives perceived as deadly or offensive weapons such as automatic or switchblade knives or butterfly knives may be restricted or prohibited. Even where knives may be legally carried on the person generally, this right may not extend to all places and circumstances, and knives of any description may be prohibited at airports, schools, public buildings or courthouses, and at public events. Austria. In accordance with the Austrian Arms Act of 1996, it is illegal to buy, import, possess or carry weapons that are disguised as another object or as an object of common use. For ordinary knives, there are no restrictions or prohibitions based on blade length or opening or locking mechanism. The Austrian Arms Act defines weapons as objects that by their very nature are intended to reduce or eliminate the defensive ability of a person through direct impact. Consequently, certain knives are considered weapons, in accordance with this definition, except for firearms, however, which are heavily regulated. Such weapons, including automatic opening lock blade knives, OTF automatic knives, balisongs, and gravity knives are implicitly permitted under the Arms Act, and thus may be bought, possessed and carried by anyone over the age of 18 who has not been expressively banned from owning any weapon by the civilian authorities. Belgium. Article 3(1) of the 2006 Weapons Act lists the switchblade or automatic knife, as well as butterfly knives, throwing stars, and knives or blades that have the appearance of other objects as prohibited weapons. In addition to specifically prohibited knives, the police and local jurisdictions have broad discretion to authority to prohibit the carrying or possession of a wide variety of knives, to include carriage inside a vehicle, if the owner cannot establish sufficient legal reason for doing so, particularly in urban areas or at public events. This discretion extends to even folding knives without a locking blade. Canada. The Canadian Criminal Code criminalizes the possession of knives which open automatically. Section 84 defines a knife that has a blade that opens automatically by gravity or centrifugal force or by hand pressure applied to a button, spring or other device attached to or in the handle of the knife, as a prohibited weapon. Only persons who have been granted exemption by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police through the Canadian Firearms Program are allowed to possess prohibited weapons. If a person is found in unauthorized possession of a prohibited knife by any law enforcement officer, the person is liable to a maximum of 5 years in jail and the weapon being seized. The Crown can then apply to a provincial court judge for the weapon to be forfeited and destroyed. The import and export of prohibited weapons is also strictly regulated and enforced by the Canada Border Services Agency. Examples of prohibited knives include any knife, including a switchblade, gravity knife, or butterfly knife with a blade that opens automatically by gravity or centrifugal force or by hand pressure applied to a button, spring or other device in or attached to the handle of the knife. Constant companion. Finger rings with blades or other sharp objects projecting from the surface. Push daggers. Manually opened or one-handed opening knives, including spring-assisted knives, that do not fall within the categories listed as prohibited weapons definition are legal to own, import and use. There is no length restriction on carrying knives within the Criminal Code, but there is a prohibition against carrying a knife if the possessor intends to carry for a purpose dangerous to public peace or for the purpose of committing a criminal offense. It is also an offense to take a weapon or prohibited device to a public meeting. China. Due to concerns about potential violence at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, China began restricting dangerous knives, requiring that purchasers register with the government when purchasing these knives. Included in the new restrictions are knives with blood grooves, lock blade knives, knives with blades measuring over 22 centimeters in length, and knives with blades over 15 centimeters in length also having a point angle of less than 60 degrees. As of January 2011, according to an authorized Leatherman dealer in Beijing, all knives with a locking blade are illegal unless they are part of a larger multi-tool like a Leatherman. However, many people still carry locking pocket knives, especially when camping, with no issues. He suggested carrying locking knives in checked luggage on airplanes and on your person in trains and subways, since they could be confiscated if found in a bag. Foreigners are generally given a bit more leeway in China, so if a traveler is caught with a small knife there will probably be no prosecution and at most confiscation. Czech Republic. Czech weapon law from the year 2002 concerns firearms only, with no other legislation concerning knives in existence. This means there are no restrictions on the possession or carrying of any types of knives or swords. Not that it is common or considered appropriate to carry one openly in public places such as streets or public buildings. Denmark. In Denmark, fixed blade knives are legal to own if the blade is no longer than 12 centimeters. Blades over this length may only be legally owned if the possessor has a legitimate reason for carrying the knife or a special collector's permit. However, such knives are still generally illegal to carry in public, whether on one's person or in a vehicle, unless transported in such a manner as to prevent ready access by the owner. Folding non-lock blade knives are legal to carry if the blade length does not exceed 7 centimeters. Locking knives and knives over 7 centimeters must be transported in public so as not to allow ready access by the owner. Knives with blades that may be opened with one hand, automatic opening knives, push daggers, gravity knives, disguised knives and knives with ready access by the wearer are illegal to own or possess. Multi-tools featuring one-hand opening blades are also illegal to own or possess. Owning throwing knives and throwing in private or public is subject to permissions. France. In France, the carrying of any Category 6 weapon, defined as including any knife of any blade length with a fixed blade, or a folding blade with a locking system, is illegal, unless carried for good reason, for example, as part of the tools of one's profession. French law does allow the carrying in public of a folding knife of reasonable size. French law also defines switchblades as Category 6 weapons, which may be legally purchased if over 18 years of age, but may not be carried on one's person. If carried in a vehicle, such knives must be placed in a secure, locked compartment not accessible to the vehicle occupants. In addition, French law provides that authorities may classify any knife as a prohibited item depending upon circumstances and the discretion of the police or judicial authorities, and summarily confiscate it. Netherlands. As of 2011 in the Netherlands, a new law prohibits ownership or possession of the following knives, whether kept at home or not: stilettos, switchblades, folding knives with more than one cutting edge, throwing knives, folding knives with an overall length of more than 28 centimeters when open, butterfly or gravity knives, disguised knives and push daggers. Also, it is illegal to carry a fixed blade knife with more than one cutting edge, though such a knife may be kept at home for collector purposes. In addition to national laws, each Dutch city and urban district has the right to prohibit carrying of any knife that can potentially be used as a weapon in certain no-go areas. Normally a no-go area includes all built-up urban areas including bars, cafes, concerts, and public gathering places or events. In public, a knife must be transported in such a manner so that it is not directly usable by the owner. such as storing the knife in a locked case for carrying in a backpack, or placing the locked-up knife in a storage area of a vehicle separate from the passenger compartment. Germany. German knife law establishes 3 categories of knives. 1. Prohibited knives. 2. Knives designated as cutting and thrusting weapons. And 3. Other knives. Some knives are additionally classified as restricted use, in that they may be possessed in the home or business, but may not be carried on the person. In addition, Paragraph 42 Section 5 of the Weapons Act gives each German state the option in certain areas to enact local regulations prohibiting the carrying of weapons and any dangerous objects in so-called weapons ban areas for purposes of protecting public safety and order. Weapons ban areas have been enacted in Berlin and Hamburg. In addition, Paragraph 42 Section 5 of the Weapons Act gives each German state the option in certain areas to enact local regulations prohibiting the carrying of weapons and any dangerous objects in so-called weapons ban areas for purposes of protecting public safety and order. Weapons ban areas have been enacted in Berlin and Hamburg. Prohibited knives. German law prohibits the manufacture, importation, or sale of butterfly knives, gravity knives, and push daggers, as well as knives designed to be disguised as another object, such as a sword, cane, or belt buckle knife. Automatic or switchblade knives are generally prohibited, with certain exceptions based on blade length and number of sharpened edges. Switchblades and automatic knives with telescoping blade opening designs are prohibited. Side-opening automatic knives are also prohibited unless 1. The blade is no longer than 8.5 cm, and 2. The blade is single-edged, i.e., a blade without double edges, such as a stiletto or dagger. Cutting and thrusting weapons. Knives designated as cutting and thrusting weapons, but not otherwise specifically prohibited, may be possessed by persons of 18 years and older. German law defines a cutting and thrusting weapon as any object intended to reduce or eliminate the ability of a person to attack another person or to defend themselves. This includes swords, sabers, daggers, stilettos, and bayonets. For example, as a bayonet is a military weapon intended to injure or kill people, it is regarded as a weapon by the criminal law. In contrast, a machete is regarded as a tool to clear dense vegetation. Knives classed as cutting and thrusting weapons are generally restricted to possession and use on private property, and may not be carried in public or at certain public events. Restricted use knives. All knives that are not illegal may be legally purchased, owned, and used by anyone on private property. However, some knives are restricted from being carried in public, which is defined as exercising actual control of a restricted class knife outside the home, business, or private property. All cutting and thrusting weapons such as daggers, swords, or stilettos. All folding knives that are locking and have a one-handed opening mechanism. A knife that has only one of these 2 features may be legal to carry. All knives with fixed blades over 12.0 cm. Restricted use knives may be carried if transported in a locked, sealed container, or if there is a commonly accepted legitimate purpose for carrying it, such as participation in a historical reenactment, sporting use, or as a necessary tool in a trade or business. The desire to defend oneself, or to use the knife as a tool without proof of necessity for its use is ordinarily not considered a legitimate purpose under the law. Greece. It is illegal to carry a knife for use as a weapon in attack or defense. The only general restriction is intended use, not the properties of the knife itself. However, in practice there will be significant leeway for interpretation for police officers and judges, and much will depend on whether an intended use, other than as a weapon, can be argued, for which the properties of the knife in question will be very relevant. So, carrying a knife that has its main use as a weapon will be illegal. In addition, it is not allowed to carry knives in certain places, such as courtrooms, to football matches, etc. Carrying knives is generally very unusual in towns, but not in the countryside. Law 2168 1993 on weapons, explosives, etc. Article 1. Meaning of terms, applicability. 2. Objects that offer themselves, epsilon iota nu alpha iota pi rho omicron sigma phi omicron rho alpha, to attack or defense are also considered weapons. In particular, b. Knives of all sorts, except those where ownership is justified by use in the home, profession or education, or art, hunting, fishing or other similar uses. The remaining sections refer to sprays and electroshockers, c. knuckle dusters, clubs, nunchakus, etc. d. flamethrowers or chemical sprays, e. fishing spear guns. No license is needed for import, trade or carrying of knives for these uses. See also the Constitutional Court Decision 1299/2008, where the intended use of the weapon found in the car of two criminals is the point of discussion. A useful article from a hunting journal, Hong Kong. Under the Weapons Ordinance, certain knives are designated as prohibited weapons, including gravity knife, knuckle duster whether spiked or not and with or without blade, any bladed or pointed weapon designed to be used in a fashion whereby the handle is held in a clenched fist and the blade or point protrudes between the fingers of the fist. Any knife the blade of which is exposed by a spring or other mechanical or electric device. Possession of prohibited weapon is illegal under Section 4 of the Ordinance. An offender is liable to a fine of and to imprisonment for 3 years. Any police officers or customs officers can seize and detain any prohibited weapon. Once convicted, the weapon is automatically forfeited to the government and can then be disposed of by the Commissioner of Police. Hungary. Carrying a knife with blade length over 8 cm is prohibited in public places in Hungary unless justified by sport, work or everyday activity. Automatic knives, throwing stars and French knives are prohibited regardless of blade length and may be sold only to members of the army, law enforcement and the National Security Agency. Violation may be punished with a fine up to 50,000 Hungarian forints. Possession at home and transportation in secure wrapping is allowed for everyone. Italy. Carrying a knife in Italy is strictly forbidden. Knives with 2 cutting edges, locking blades, balisong, daggers, bayonets, switchblades are all considered weapons. As such, no one is permitted to carry them, not even if issued with a firearm permit. Other knives are considered to be tools, not weapons, as long as the design, shape, intended usage is that of a stabbing or slashing weapon. No distinction is made on the size or length. However, as any knife can be used as a weapon, all knives that do not fall in the weapon category belong to the improvised weapons group. As such, you are not allowed to carry them unless a specific circumstance of need exists. If found with a knife, the carrier must provide proof of such need. The need is intended in terms of can't do without. You can't carry a knife and an apple to justify the need of the knife being peeling the apple to eat it as you can peel it at home. Going fishing and having a fishing knife could apply. Most of these restrictions apply to other tools with cutting capabilities too, such as scissors and gardening tools. Japan. Any fixed knife containing a blade length of 15 cm or more requires permission from the Prefectural Public Safety Commission in order to possess. Permission requirements also apply to any type of pocket knife over 6 cm, spears over 15 cm in blade length, and Japanese halberds. All knives with a blade length over 6 cm are prohibited from being carried, under a crime law, with an exception for carrying for duty or other justifiable reasons. There is a penalty of up to 2 years prison or up to a 300,000 yen fine. Latvia. Latvian legislation, law on the handling of weapons, defines knives as and prohibits to carry non-firearm weapons except the non-firearm weapons necessary for hunters in hunting and non-firearms necessary to sportsmen for the relevant sport, in competitions or training. Lithuania. According to Lithuanian law, it is legal to possess and carry most types of knives. This includes hunting knives, pocket knives, multi-tools, survivor knives, balisongs, etc., as knives are not considered weapons. The only exception are switchblades. It is illegal to carry or possess a switchblade if it meets one of the following criteria. The blade is longer than 8.5 centimeters, the width in the middle of the blade is less than 14% of its total length, the blade is double-sided. Poland. All kinds of knives are regarded as dangerous tools, but are not considered weapons under Polish law, so no restriction related to weapons apply. The exception is a blade hidden in an object that doesn't look like a weapon. It is legal to sell, buy, trade and possess any knives, and Polish law does not prohibit carrying a knife in a public place. However, certain prohibitions in possession of so-called dangerous tools may apply during mass events.